multiple whistleblower allegations, a fractured movement, a leader who never lived long enough to answer the questions that now define his legacy. This is the story people inside Turning Point USA hoped would never make it beyond a handful of hallways. But today, it's in your hands. And once you hear what former staff, ex-volunteers, and anonymous insiders claim they saw, you may start asking yourself the same uncomfortable question they did. How did all of this stay hidden for so long? The answers do not come quickly. They come in pieces, whispered messages, late-night emails, screenshots sent in fear, and interviews where grown adults struggled to keep their hands still. And each piece reveals something far heavier than anyone expected. You may want to sit with this one. And if you want updates as this story continues to unfold, you can subscribe anytime, because this is only the beginning. We start with the moment the first whistleblower stepped forward. She didn't lead with a dramatic confession. She led with a quiet statement that carried the weight of someone who waited too many years to speak. I don't know who to trust anymore, but I know staying silent would make me responsible. Her story matched details shared by others, people from different departments, different regions, and different roles. None of them coordinated their claims, none of them interacted with each other, yet the patterns were unmistakable. Several said they watched an inner leadership circle operate in ways they couldn't explain. Decisions that didn't make sense. Meetings held without documentation. Instructions that shifted depending on who was in the room. And the most striking part? Many insisted that Charlie Kirk himself seemed unaware of key operations happening under his own banner. Or worse, that he was kept out of specific conversations until the final moment when decisions were already made. This wasn't an accusation, it was confusion, and confusion is what fuels every major institutional failure. Others described departments they didn't know existed until the day those departments suddenly needed something from them or needed them gone. These whistleblowers said they felt watched, evaluated, quietly marked. One former coordinator said he was removed from 2 projects he had built from the ground up. No explanation. A week later, he was asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement he had never seen before. He refused. His contract ended that month. Another staff member said she noticed unusual language in donor communication records, sentences that implied money was flowing through channels she hadn't been briefed on. She asked questions. Her supervisor stopped answering her emails. Then there were the firings people still whisper about, abrupt, unexplained, and followed by messages to the remaining team telling them this decision is final. No transparency, no accountability, only fear. These were people who spent years defending the organization publicly, now saying they no longer recognize the place they once trusted. And if you're watching this right now, you should ask yourself why people who gained nothing by coming forward chose to risk everything just to be heard. As more whistleblowers spoke, a disturbing pattern emerged, a sense that the public image of Turning Point USA had drifted from the internal reality. And when that happens, truth becomes something negotiated instead of something upheld. Some insiders claim they saw tension between certain departments in the national office. Others pointed to rising conflicts around donor expectations. Privately, staff wondered if major contributors were being told a version of events that didn't match what employees witnessed. A former TPUSA faith volunteer said he watched decisions shift overnight after a donor meeting. He said it was the first time he realized the stories told to the public and the stories told behind closed doors weren't the same thing. He said that was the moment he understood he was part of something he no longer recognized. Then came the allegations that shook even veteran investigators. Claims of possible intelligence ties, indirect, unverified, but mentioned by multiple people across different states. None offered proof, but all described the same unsettling interactions. Individuals who appeared during key moments, influencing strategy before disappearing again. One whistleblower said, "I don't know who they worked for. I only know they weren't from here, and everyone treated them like their presence was normal." If even one of these claims is true, the implications go beyond internal politics. But perhaps the most explosive concern came from those who noticed irregularities in public tax filings, documents submitted late, amended without explanation, or missing expected details. None of this proves wrongdoing, but all of it raises questions any responsible institution should address promptly. And yet, according to the whistleblowers, those questions were shut down almost instantly. One staffer said that when he asked about the missing filings, he received a strange warning: "Don't go looking for answers you won't like." Another said she was told the delays were normal, even though she had previously worked in compliance and knew they weren't. Still, these individuals stayed quiet for years. Why speak now? Some say Charlie's passing changed everything. Without his leadership, they watched different factions push for control. Others said they realized the public deserved clarity, especially after the movement lost its most recognizable figure. And a few admitted they simply couldn't carry the emotional weight anymore. When people start telling the truth because silence feels heavier than consequences, that's when you know the story is much bigger than anyone claim. And as you listen to these testimonies, you might feel something unexpected: guilt. Because these issues didn't appear overnight. They grew in the shadows created by a culture that rewarded loyalty over transparency, that praised unity but dismissed accountability, that encouraged staff to give everything while giving back as little clarity as possible. If there was a chance to prevent what happened, it was years ago, and everyone, supporters, donors, critics, employees, played a part in letting this pressure build. You should stay with this investigation. There is far more coming. The most serious allegations have not even been discussed yet. This moment could reshape the future of TPUSA. It could force questions that have been avoided for too long. Or it could expose fractures within an organization that always claimed strength. In the next section, we'll examine the individuals behind these accusations, who they are, what they risked, and why their stories connect in ways that can no longer be ignored. So if you want the next part of this unfolding investigation, make sure you're subscribed. You won't want to miss what's coming next.
One of the first names to emerge was a program manager who had spent years inside regional operations. She never appeared in photos, never gave interviews, and never sought recognition. Yet the moment she spoke, people who worked with her understood why her testimony carried weight. She calmly described a pattern of assignments she was given, tasks that looked harmless on the surface, but raised questions the moment she asked for documentation. She said the answers always felt incomplete. She never accused anyone directly. She only explained what she witnessed and how long she tried to convince herself it was normal. Another former staff member recounted a moment when he was instructed to reroute a communication chain away from standard channels. He said he pushed back, asking whether legal had approved it. He remembered the look he got, a look that didn't say yes or no, but instead warned him that he had stepped into territory people advised him to avoid. He said that was the first time he realized his job wasn't what he thought it was. You might be wondering why these details matter. They matter because institutions don't fall apart in one dramatic moment. They fracture slowly through decisions people justify in private, hoping no one ever pieces them together. And when they do, everyone pretends it was inevitable. More whistleblowers began sharing stories about unusual department setups. A former event coordinator said she discovered a section of internal messaging threads she didn't have access to, something she had never seen in years of work. She asked a friend in another department to check. He said he couldn't see it either. A week later, the entire thread disappeared from the system. She only captured one screenshot before it vanished. What bothered her wasn't the secrecy, she said. It was the feeling that the secrecy had become routine. You should take a moment and think about how easy it is for organizations to create habits that never get questioned, habits that swallow concerns before they reach the surface, habits that make silence feel safer than truth. One volunteer from TPUSA Faith said he began noticing patterns in travel assignments, which speakers were pushed forward, which ones were moved aside, and which events were suddenly restructured after private meetings. He didn't understand the shift, but he said it felt like decisions were made by people who weren't in the room, people no one could name. He asked a supervisor about it once. The supervisor smiled and told him, "Some things don't need to be explained." He said he drove home that night with a new understanding of how power works and how easily it moves without accountability. As more individuals shared their experiences, a troubling theme surfaced: fear of retaliation. Employees said they felt watched after raising concerns. Volunteers said they were excluded from group chats. Some said they were told, indirectly, that they had become an issue. When people begin to feel isolated for asking reasonable questions, it shows you how far an institution has drifted from its promises. If you're watching right now, remember to stay tuned. There are parts of the story that will challenge what you think you know about leadership, loyalty, and what really happens behind public messaging. The next testimony came from someone who worked on the donor relations side. He explained that certain conversations weren't documented. He said he saw decisions change depending on who was present, and that some donors seemed to have influence far beyond their contributions. He described moments when strategies shifted instantly after phone calls. He said it felt like the organization answered to forces that never appeared on any official chart. That statement echoed across several testimonies. Staff said they sensed a divide between what was officially true and what was informally controlled, a system where questions about finances or structure were met with discomfort rather than transparency. None of these individuals accused anyone of wrongdoing. They only described what they saw and how it shaped their understanding of the place they once believed in. Then came something even more troubling: claims from multiple insiders that certain individuals operated almost independently inside the institution, taking direction from somewhere unknown. These claims remain unverified, but the consistency between sources is what struck investigators. People from different states, different roles, and different years, all describing the same type of presence: someone who appeared during major transitions, influencing direction before fading back into the background. One staff member said, "I stopped trying to guess who they reported to. All I knew was that decisions changed when they walked in." You can feel the weight of these statements because they reflect a larger failure, the failure of collective responsibility. People saw patterns forming, but they hoped someone else would address them. They assumed the system could correct itself. It never did. And yet, even as these accounts surfaced, no one offered a full explanation. The organization didn't respond to the deeper concerns. The questions stayed open, and the people inside were left to interpret silence as a message of its own. If you haven't already, you can subscribe to follow where this investigation goes next. You're going to want the next chapter because the individuals who come forward next bring a level of detail that changes the trajectory of this entire case. The story continues, and what's ahead exposes a side of the institution that few outside its walls have ever heard.